Due to the graphic nature of this program, viewer discretion is advised.
Hello, everybody. It is the Friday, January 9th, 2026 episode of the Marco Dure Show. Thank you for tuning in today's show to hear all the relevant groundbreaking news here in America and around the world, the only show where the facts are facts and hard truths thrive. Don't forget to follow the show wherever you get your podcast, and now it's available on all streaming apps. Please share it if you can, and let's begin the best hour of radio, uncensored and ready to go. It's Friday. And that, of course, means it's time for our weekly economic report to keep everybody informed with what is going on in the economic world right around us. Let's not waste any time. Let's jump right into our major stock indexes right now. Let's take a look at the S&P 500 right now. We've got it trading today at $6,970.79 per share right now. It is up 0.71% from yesterday. By the way, a almost 17% year-over-year increase. So very, very good, very high performing. Let's take a look at the NASDAQ next, trading at $23,696.59 a share, up 0.92% from yesterday. And finally, the Dow Jones International. Right now it's trading at $49,509, up 0.49% from yesterday. All doing very, very well, as we can easily see. Again, each stock here is showing resilience due to the AI investments that we're continuing to see, both from public investors, the government itself, and it's a really big push for what's happening in these AI investments right now. You know, you can look at, for example, the NASDAQ, very big boost coming from the semiconductors, and of course, that infrastructure. Look at Dow Jones. You have America's blue chip giant, and of course the wireless data coming out right now. And the S&P 500 investments in things like jet engines. Again, we just saw this week the $8.6 billion new investment in the aircrafts for the state of Israel. And of course, a discussion of sending more to Turkey. So we see all these things happening with this market. And again, they're doing very, very well as a result of that. So usually, again, great returns. I mean, you're looking at double-digit returns for each of these stocks this year. All right, let's look at the oil industry. Obviously, a very big week for oil, as one can imagine. Brent crude is trading up $2 from last week at $62.63 per barrel. The WTI is up $1.01 from last week, trading at $58.15 per barrel. There are several reasons for this, obviously, and one of the major ones is the wildfires that are occurring right now in Alberta, Canada, which is stopping oil production of this crude oil and keeping supply really limited right now as it has pushed prices up, right? So we look at the geopolitical factors as well, like tensions in Venezuela right now with the production being limited. We're seeing shipping lanes being blocked, and of course the possibility of even more sanctions, and the fear that supply could go from glut to obviously much, much lower. So we're seeing the supply and demand aspect of this oil production really taking shape with what's happening globally right now. And then we look at OPEC right now has also eased its output with obviously some rising demand increases, and we're seeing the price adjust as a result of that. And then you look at just the global sentiments and optimism in the general and upbringing in prices. So we're seeing a little bit of that. And again, we can look at the Chevron, we can look at Shell, ExxonMobil. All their shares, of course, are increasing dollar-wise at the exact same pace as both Brent crude and WTI right now. So it shouldn't be a shock for anybody that these are greatly increasing. So it's been a fairly good week for oil prices. And again, as those stock prices go up, the profits for these oil companies and these corporations will continue to increase as a result of that. So people are very bullish on oil right now. Let's take a look at the tech market right now. We're looking at Microsoft right now. Some of these stocks have not done so well at the start of 2026. Microsoft alone, the stocks have fallen 9% from last week to $478.22 a share after a 3-month decline. Apple trading at $259.04 a share, down 4.72 cents just from last week, while it does remain up year over year at 6.73%. NVIDIA, the very big winner in the tech field this week. NVIDIA, although it is down 2.02%, trading at $185.04 a share today. But look at this, though. The overall, year over year, NVIDIA is up 27% from this time last year. Again, very strong performance, largely because it's in the AI sector. We see the increase in the AI chip dominance, of course, coming from NVIDIA. And we also see this demand for AI, which is exploding this year, by the way. It will be a big year for AI at the very start. We look at new architecture, such as their graphics processing unit for mathematics. And of course, people are very bullish about AI in general. So naturally, people are investing and looking to turn a profit. And of course, NVIDIA is that stock of choice. So again, very high performance in NVIDIA still, despite the small decrease from yesterday. Let's look at Amazon now, up $4.67 from last week's closing, bringing it to a total of $246.29. And again, we just came off a very strong quarter four. Lots of people are, again, using the online retailer for obviously purchasing and what have you, making online purchasing very much more convenient. So naturally, Amazon is doing very well right now. Meta down almost $12 a share, though, however. I guess they're not selling as much of our data as previously. Bringing today's share numbers down to $648.89 per share. Yeah. So we see a little bit of a shift in the tech market here. Again, we see the AI obviously keeping it afloat. And again, the government is bullish on it too, so naturally, people will continue to invest. Let's look at the real winners, though, this week. I like this. Gold is on the rise and winning again right now, trading at a whopping $4,511.30 an ounce, up 4.12% from last Friday's close, up 70% from this time last year. You're making a hell of a return if you're investing in gold this past year. And by the way, another great week for silver, too. Let's see here. It's going up to $81.01 per ounce, up 13.15% from last week, and a massive 160% increase from this time last year. You're making a hell of a return on silver as well. Again, both very, very high performing, going nowhere but up. You'll recall, as I've told you before, if gold maintains and it stabilizes over the 4,200 mark for a couple months, you could expect it to continue to go up. And what are we seeing as a result right now? We're seeing gold continue to climb. Very, 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 very good. All right, very good stuff. I mean, again, they're very well performing, as one can imagine. So we're seeing, obviously, some very good things in the stock market, of course. Some of it is artificial. Some of it's obviously from the government. But what you see with the gold, what you see with the silver, is really this result of the dollar. And, of course, the dollar dropping. That's why you're seeing those two stocks continuing to climb right now. All right, let's talk about some other things in our economy as we start off 2026. And we finally get some of these big numbers in from last year's figures. NBC News states that the U.S. job growth in 2025 was concentrated almost entirely in healthcare and social assistance. While the sector is focused on good productions, and such as manufacturing, transportation, seeing declines, reinforcing concerns that the labor demand has narrowed rather than broadly rebounded. I talked with you about this all last year. I said we need to get more manufacturing back in the United States. We haven't really seen that boost come just yet. Now, it does say that the economy did add 484,000 new jobs in 2025, according to data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. However, this article does not mention the fact that we lost 1.1 million jobs as of December of 2025, making it the worst year for job creation since the pandemic year of 2020 and the worst year for hiring outside of a recession since 2003. Now, many people right now are telling me, I think 2026 is going to be the year. I think we're going to see lots of growth. I haven't seen anything that would really indicate that. I know, obviously, the federal government is very optimistic about what could happen. Maybe they know something I don't know, but all the trends I'm looking at is showing really no sign of increasing as of right yet. So we'll have to continue to see where this leads us. What is the golden goose going to do that gives us, obviously, some growth? Is it going to be the tax relief? Is it going to be something in that sector? Is it going to be the lack of, obviously, imposing new regulations on us? Is it going to be removing tariffs? Obviously, if President Trump doesn't win his tariffs war in the Supreme Court and they get taken off, that could mean a big boost for the economy. Could it be the interest rates cut? Now, although I'd have to tell you right now, they're predicting January cuts would be obviously gone at this point. But where are we going to see this growth? Where are we going to see this job growth come in? And where are we going to see this, obviously, increase in the manufacturing market? Again, if we can bring manufacturing back, that would be a great thing. It'll produce good-paying jobs. It will obviously boost our economy that we're producing here. It'll be cheaper to send goods out, especially with the lower energy prices and, of course, gasoline prices. That would be something beneficial for each and every one of us. But we're not seeing that. That's the big problem. Now, economists have expected some softness in the labor market, in large part due to President Trump's aggressive cuts to government jobs and, of course, immigration crackdowns. I hear that and I say, we took out 2 million people. Only 330,000 of them were actual ICE detainees and people getting arrested. So no mass deportations there. But he also promised to spark U.S. manufacturing and, of course, revive domestic production. Again, touting the tariffs as a way to bring back jobs to American soil. Well, why haven't we seen it yet then? Why haven't we seen this increase in manufacturing coming back to the United States yet? Because it's not happening. It just isn't going to happen when you have super high corporate tax rates. That's the big problem here. Start to cut taxes, do tax reform, get it down, make an incentive to come back to the United States, or what you could do, what I've been saying for probably well over a year now, I said, make quotas in the United States. You could only send in so much of X to the United States. That would be a big blow to keep your job overseas, would it not, folks? I think so. Especially with all the outsourcing we had thanks to NAFTA in the mid-1990s, thanks to Billy Clinton. Not a good thing. All right. So the majority of the labor market's job gains in 2025 came from, as I said before, the healthcare and social assistance industries, right? So where were we performing well outside of that? Was there any real growth? Well, on the government side, we saw layoffs tied to, obviously, DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, the federal initiative obviously previously run by Elon Musk. Now, we did lose some 277,000 jobs, or roughly 9.2% of the government payrolls as a result of that, which obviously may have been a big factor in the Virginia government statewide race. But that uneven sector was reflected in the latest job data released on Friday, and it shows that December payroll growth came at a sluggish 50,000, and earlier months were revised even lower, underscoring the labor market that entered 2026 with limited momentum beyond a few key service industries. And again, like I told you before, healthcare, assistance services like that. But still, economists say that the report, which included a slight dip in the unemployment rate to 4.4%, down from 4.6%, was strong enough for the U.S. to avoid an imminent recession and, of course, keep the Federal Reserve on hold when it comes to interest rate cuts, at least for right now. I don't think we're going to cut right now, especially if we're not seeing the necessary growth. We're still seeing slight inflation. Ladies and gentlemen, we saw 3% growth year over year in inflation. And again, the increase in the GDP came again as a result of the boom in the AI economy, right? Now, until we see some growth in that production, I don't think we're going to continue to see that growth stabilize. That's my own estimation. But we need to see the manufacturing, folks. If we can bring the manufacturing back, this is so key. If we start producing again like we once did, I mean, we produced everything in this country. If we start producing here again, you will see growth. We'll see our own growth. You'll see us becoming a major exporter versus a major importer yet again. We have obviously our own national debt to quarrel with. We're at somewhere between 300, might as well be 300, $38.3 trillion in debt. That shows no sign of going down. Now, the interest alone every year is accruing to $1 trillion. All right. So we talk about job gains. We talk about job growth. The Wall Street Journal, though, talked to us, obviously, about the same issue. And they said the average weekly hours ticked down in the month of December, obviously because of temporary help services shedding jobs nearly every month in 2025, which could be a sign that employers are facing, obviously, slower demand, obviously, of their goods and services, and are reducing their employee hours and pulling back from this temporary labor market to avoid laying off staff. That could be it, too. So you're seeing a lot of part-time jobs being applied in that 584,000 figure. Now, those on the sidelines, here's the part about all this, too. As I said to you before, we lost 1.1 million jobs. It said December's report showed a number of long-term unemployed, those without a job for 27 weeks or more, is nearly up to 400,000 from just a year ago. And the median duration of unemployment also jumped in December to 11.4 weeks from 9.8 weeks just a month earlier. Now, the number of people working part-time who would prefer a full-time job has increased by nearly 1 million since December of last year. What did I just tell you? What's the article not telling you? We lost 1.1 million jobs in 2025. Now, obviously, some of those numbers are probably obviously a part of the 584,000, of course, but you're seeing less jobs than what we had before. That's a big takeaway from that. So, again, I want this to increase. You want this to increase. How do we get this to increase? Bring back manufacturing. Make it easier for people to start their own businesses. Look at the amount of businesses we saw go as a result since 2020, thanks to COVID. Let's get people back starting their own businesses. Let's see what we can do with this. We need it, folks. We need this to happen. Now, one other major problem in the economy, of course, is in Fox Business. It says credit scores plummet across multiple states, creating the perfect storm for American wallets. So why is this happening, I wonder? Credit scores dropping? What could be a major factor for this, folks? Well, what we're seeing right now is a very clear trend, especially when it comes to missed student loan payments. So young people can't make their student loan payment. What happens as a result of that? Obviously, the real impact on credit scores across the country. And again, once these payments resumed, we saw this year, they saw the national average credit score continue to drop. Over 4.5 million Americans were caught off guard, is what Fox News Digital tells us. So the real problem comes in here. You have the combination of higher interest rates on these student loans. There's no more free money just pouring into the economy. And the student loan system that reports very harshly on the lack of payments, okay? It hits consumers a certain way, of course, and it begins to bring down the consumer credit scores. That's a big problem. Well, if your credit scores are in the toilet, good luck buying a home. Good luck doing a lot of things. So, again, this whole thing just comes crumbling down. Then, of course, you have people that are obviously using credit card debt. They're increasing, maxing out their credit cards as a result to, again, a sluggish economy. Not a good thing. But we see both the credit card and the student loan debt almost in sync with one another. Both figures right now are over $1 trillion each. And they're only going to continue to grow. Then you add the interest on what everybody owes, and then it's the perfect storm indeed. Now, again, we're seeing different things in different states, however, which is an interesting dynamic, I think. You all might agree on that. We're seeing Missouri coming in at number one. They're seeing, obviously, 1.51% decrease from the previous year. Georgia, 1.36% dip from just the previous year. And Delaware, home of Joseph Robinette Biden, the great Joe Biden, who's asleep at the wheel as we speak right now, seeing a 1.2% decrease in the average credit score. Now, while that might not mean a lot to everybody, of course, it does mean something, though. You're seeing something taking place within a particular group of young people who are fed up with the system right now, young people who are voting for a Mum Dummy and a Katie Wilson, both of whom are out of their minds and have no idea what they're doing, instead of voting for capitalism and republicanism. That's not a good thing. I think we all can agree on that. So what's the answer to this? Is there a quick recovery to this? How do we get people paying their bills? How do we get people in better paying jobs? We need the economy to become more vibrant, and of course we need more opportunities for young people to make it. How are we going to get a loan from a bank if, let's say, you were starting a business, if your credit score is in the toilet? You're just simply not. And again, credit touches everything. Every single thing. And also, people, if they're losing jobs, if they're on unemployment, if they're on a very tight budget, that's another factor in all this. If you're in one of these blue cities and blue states where obviously New York, LA, San Francisco, Chicago, good old Chicago, any of these cities right now, right? And you are obviously experiencing high cost for housing, if you're talking about high cost for, obviously, utility bills in a lot of these states, it's a drag on what you can get. It's a very big drag. And then you add on top of that, we see people lose their jobs. You see your income disrupted. Credit almost always follows. That's just the way it works. And again, if you're not disciplined in your finances, if you don't know what you're doing, things can get a hold of you pretty quickly. Your credit touches everything. So we've got to understand, what schools should have done way back when, and they should do it right now. We should show students how to budget every month, how to write down every cent you pay for, how to keep track of it. And that would at least create some stability for young people. The people now today, they just simply swipe a credit card, and then they look at their balance at the end of the month and go, whoa, I spent this much? I didn't even realize that. Oh, I had this small fee from this account. Oh, I had this in here. Oh, I had to get gas that day. I just didn't think about it. And when you're on a very tight budget right now, which is what we're seeing for many young Americans, right, the people 40 years and under, it becomes a problem. It becomes a major problem very, very quickly. So I think this is indicative of where the economy is right now. It's certainly not growing in the way we want to, and of course the young people are not getting the opportunities they want. So that creates some dismay too, especially amongst young people going into the 2026 midterms. I would have rather have seen much more growth among this group of people, but obviously we're not seeing that, certainly not just yet. All right, one final thing. This might be a plus for some people, by the way. I think everyone would appreciate this. This is in CNBC. It said that mortgage rates fell sharply on Friday after President Donald Trump said on social media that he is instructing mortgage giants, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, to buy $200 billion in mortgage bonds. Now, what's the concept behind this? Well, if they buy these mortgage bonds, the mortgage rates will simply go down. Monthly payments will go down, and of course, the cost of owning a home is more affordable. Now, for example, I thought he said affordability was a myth by the Democrats. Apparently, he changed his tune on that one. But the 30-year mortgage rate dropped by 22 basis points to 5.99%, matching a low from February 2nd, 2023, according to Mortgage News Daily. And the two giants, obviously, they do not originate home loans, but they buy home loans from lenders, these two companies, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. And they bundle them into mortgage-backed securities or MBSs, and then they sell these bonds to investors, and thereby replenishing lender funds for new loans and, of course, keeping the interest rates lower and more stable for home buyers. So that's the thought behind all this. But here's the biggest problem behind this. Is this doable? Is this going to actually work? And the idea that we're not going to do anything with production at the same time when obviously more people, again, that same group of people I just talked to you about who are maxing out their credit cards and obviously lowering their credit scores. If we don't increase that opportunity for them to be able to purchase a home, for they can see a home is viable and the purchase is viable for them, you're going to lose them in this upcoming election. It's just the way it's going to be. You've got to create opportunities in the market. But how big is this $200 billion deal? It's going to depend on a couple different factors. But again, the reaction from the MBS market is enough to tell you that it does matter. And while we still don't know how quickly this is going to start even, again, we don't know how quickly this is going to take place. What the analysts are predicting right now, these mortgage rates could end up, again, a big dip from anywhere between 25 and 50 basis points. Some predicting even lower. Now they're coming out and the analysts are saying, we believe that the $200 billion of these MBS purchases could drive a 10 to 25 bonus points reduction in mortgage rates, potentially reducing the current 30-year headline mortgage rate to roughly 6%. Currently, it's 6.21%. Now, while elevated relative to the average outstanding mortgage rate of 4.4% and 3.25% levels as recently as January of 2022, this decline may prove as a boost to both new construction demands, what I just told you, and existing home ownership. We need to increase the incentive to build more homes. It's very difficult, though, in some of these states where it's a blue state, it's a blue city, there's big populations, and you can't get people to want to invest, largely because of, obviously, people like Zoran Mamdani coming in with these renter laws, right? Rent freezes. Who the hell's going to want to build in that situation? I'll give you a hint. Nobody. Now, simply put, though, if the rates were to drop even to 5.9%, here's what they're predicting. It says for someone buying a medium-priced home, which right now is around $425,000 starting out, again, that doesn't even include the final cost, which is somewhere around $515,000 a home. According to the National Association of Realtors, using a 30-year fixed mortgage with a 20% down payment. Good luck with that. Someone can't even pay their credit card bill or their student loan payment's going to put down 20% on a home of that's over $500,000 roughly on average. Where the hell are they getting this money from? That's what I want to know. Anyways, if they are able to swing this, and I think it's, again, wishful thinking, again, 30-year mortgage, fixed-rate mortgage with 20% down payment, the monthly payment would drop by $118. Again, maybe it would create an incentive. I don't think so. I don't see this as viable for very many people. I just don't. That's just the way I see things. May give it a slight boost in this economy, but I think that rate should drop a little bit more before people would really do it. Again, we saw these things happen in 2025. We saw the rates start to drop a little bit. And even then, people were not even considering selling the homes. That's another big problem. People are also in this phase where they don't want to sell. just the way it is. All right, folks. So there's the market, of course. Will we get lower mortgage rates or reduced monthly mortgage rate payments or more affordability in the housing? I don't know. It doesn't seem like it's going to happen to me, but only time will tell. Again, I always hope that it does, but it doesn't seem like it to me. Anyways, let's move on. Bloomberg says Chevron is loading Venezuelan oil onto tankers at the fastest pace in months. Well, they're going to need to. As I told you yesterday, the amount of time it takes to process this, send it through the Gulf of America and get it processed, get it through ports and whatnot, it takes a lot of time. So until you clean up the ports, and obviously the amount of time it takes to produce, obviously it's still going to be a bit stagnant. Okay. Anyways, here's what they say. It says Chevron Corporation, the sole Western super major permitted to pump Venezuelan oil right now. Why are they lucky to do that too, by the way? I mean, I'm looking at their stock right now. It's up, and we're looking at Phillips and Valero are dropping fast. So Chevron, though, is in the clear for right now. And they're saying that they're loading these tankers up at the fastest pace in 7 months at the U.S. as the U.S. government moves to control Latin America's nation's crude riches. Well, no kidding. What do you think the whole purpose of us going in there was? To save people? Yeah, spare me. It says here that Chevron loaded 1.68 million barrels of Venezuelan oil onto ships during the first week of this month, the most for that period since May of last year. Now, according to the vessel movements tracked by Bloomberg, the amount pumped aboard vessels was almost 5 times the volume of that same week in December. So, is this going to bring down prices? Something tells me no. For a couple reasons. One, we're taking more oil that is again, much heavier, it's thicker, it's got more pollutants in it, contaminants, what have you. And it's going to take a lot more to get them to these specific refineries to, again, process it. That's the problem. As a result, again, we only have so many of these refineries in America. I think I told you yesterday we have about 6 or 7 of them that can actually refine this oil. It's very difficult to do, but the supply is there. And the U.S. pledged this week to take control of Venezuelans' oil sales, including an initial 50 million barrels. 50 million barrels. So that's a lot. But we know the current infrastructure right now, it only produces somewhere around roughly almost 1 million barrels per day. Now, whether their investment in that region is going to uptick is only time will tell. But the commodity traders and the banks have tapped to help with the effort. Proceeds are to be deposited into U.S.-controlled bank accounts for the benefit of both Venezuela and the United States. Now, when they say the benefit of both Venezuela and the United States, they're talking about the people that own this infrastructure. It's not going to go to the American people. What do I benefit from Chevron going in there? Maybe I get some lower gas prices, maybe, but probably not. So, Phillips is now set to receive a batch of 1 million barrels from Chevron's shipment at the Sweeny refinery in Texas, while Chevron and Valero are each set to receive 340,000 barrels of Boscan oil, a grade favored for asphalt production. Not too bad. Chevron declined to comment on commercial matters, while Phillips 66 didn't have an immediate comment, and of course, Valero didn't immediately return a message seeking a comment. Well, here's the problem again. It's going to take much more to get this out of the ground. Even if you increase their production more to, let's say, 1 million barrels per day, we don't know how long it's going to take for that 50 million barrels to come to the United States. Is it going to take 50 days? Is it going to take 50 weeks? We don't know. That's the problem. Yesterday I told you on the show, even if we start this process right now, the likelihood we'll see a profit from this is going to probably be at the very end of Trump's administration. That's how long it's going to take. So what, we're not going to see any product or profit in 3 years? Again, I told you the people at the top will make the money when they make the money. That's why they're there doing it. But it's going to take a while to do. That's what it's going to come down to, okay? So I don't think it's going to happen overnight. Don't hear the 30 to 50 million barrels we're going to take from Venezuela. It's going to take time because their infrastructure right now is not where it needs to be. That's the problem. And, of course, they'll divvy it up amongst the major oil corporations and their refineries. But it's going to take time. Just understand that, folks. That's all I want to say on that. And as a result of what we're hearing now, since we're talking about oil, let's talk about the oil tankers on the high seas. This is in the Washington Examiner. It says that U.S. seizes oil tankers sanctioned for transporting Russian oil. Okay. So now this is the fifth vessel to be seized in recent days. It's called the Olena. It was seized by the U.S. Coast Guard. Yep, they boarded the oil tanker. And it says here that the operation, part of the Joint Task Force Southern Spirit, was conducted early on Friday morning in the Caribbean near Trinidad and Tobago. Christy Nome went on to say that they boarded the ship, seizing the operation, went very smoothly, and it was done in close coordination with the Department of War, which is really the Department of Defense, the State Department, and the Department of Justice. So again, I want to know the reason for us taking this ship. What's the reason for this? This is the big problem. They never tell us. They said the ship sailing under an East Timor flag had attempted to evade the U.S. blockade surrounding Venezuela. It last transmitted its position in November, showing it sailing near the oil-rich country. It says Marine Traffic, a global ship trafficking service, said that it was sailing under a false flag. Now, let's understand something with all this. We heard about this the other day, too, by the way. We talked about the Bella 1, which was registered under a Russian flag and had a Russian naval escort. And, of course, the U.S. coordinated with the British military intelligence on the mission to, obviously, seize this ship. Here's the problem with all this. Number one, what does international law actually say? That's the big problem. Well, it says that there are ways in which you can intervene on the high seas in international waters. And the UN Charter is fairly specific on this. And, of course, the UN Convention of the Law of the Sea states that a state may not seize a foreign flag vessel in international waters unless one of the following situations applies. The vessel is stateless. So that's the claim for two of these five ships. They're saying they didn't have the proper flag that was being shown, therefore we were able to seize it. Okay, if that's true, that's legal. The vessel is engaged in piracy. That's not happening with any of these vessels. The flag state consents. That means they let you come on to seize the ship. That hasn't been the case so far. In fact, Russia went so far to repudiate what we did. The next would be the UN Security Council authorized the interdiction. That means they allow the stoppage of this ship to prevent them from going through. And hot pursuit from territorial waters would be the other thing. So the problem is, with each of these five, and again, I'm looking at each of them, only one of them right now is being considered likely lawful. That would be this Olena one, because they described it as reporting falsely flying the East Timor flag, again, which would mean it would be a stateless vessel moving through the region. And if it was indeed stateless, then the seizure would be lawful. However, I'm looking at each and every one of these other ships. They're all saying that, for example, the Marinera one that was seized just the other day, right by Iceland, I believe, is where it was. The legal assessment says that it was likely unlawful unless the U.S. can actually prove that the ship was not genuinely Russian flagged. Now, Russia was calling the seizure outright piracy and an unlawful action. The U.K. was claiming that the operation was in full compliance with international law, but provided no legal basis beyond supporting the U.S.'s claims on this. So if this vessel was properly Russian flagged, the U.S. had no right to seize it under the international law. And again, we look at another ship called the Skipper. This is an earlier seizure. This is part of the U.S. operation targeting Venezuelan-linked tankers. said likely unlawful because unilateral sanctions do not justify high seas seizures. The Sophia, the other ship I mentioned to you the other day, seized for illicit activities, but there was no evidence of statelessness in the reporting. There was no UN authorization, and again, there was no piracy allegations. So again, likely unlawful. And the fifth unnamed vessel, reporting confirms 5 total interdictions, but details are missing on this ship. So without proper evidence of statelessness, the seizure would have been unlawful. So we're not sure. So we don't even know if what we're saying is actually following through. That's the big problem here. But what are we doing with this? We're gonna steal this ship. What about the other ship that we stole? That was heading towards, I believe, China with 1.9 million barrels of oil on it. We stole the ship, we took the people on the ship, and we stole the boat itself on top of the oil. By definition, ladies and gentlemen, that is piracy. They paid for the oil. We intercepted the ship. We took the ship with the people on it and the oil, and we're going to keep the oil, is what President Trump said. You can go back to one of my earlier shows and listen to it last week. That's piracy, folks. And again, any type of blockade around an island when you're having declared war is, again, an active war. So we're playing with fire here. And I'll remind every one of you that under Article 2.4 of the UN Charter, which, again, we are in agreement with, we've helped write this, we signed off on this, it said that states must not use force against a territorial integrity or political independence of another state. So, obviously, this would be a breach of international maritime law, and, of course, it's illegal use of force. So we have one ship that appears to be stateless that would allow this. The other 4, obviously, would not be lawful. So what's going to happen as a result of this? What's going to happen as a result of these illegal seizures? Is anything going to happen? That's another big question. Now, President Trump sat down yesterday with 4 New York Times reporters at the White House, and they were asking him questions about these seizures and, of course, what's happening in Venezuela, and his response to what he would do if there was international law. And hat tip to Judge Andrew Napolitano's Judging Freedom podcast for getting this data. Let's take a listen so we can all understand this together.
Is there anything that could stop you if you wanted to?
Yeah, there's one thing. My own morality, my own mind. It's the only thing that can stop. And that's
law.
very good. I don't need international law. I'm not looking to hurt people.
Do you feel your administration needs to abide by international law on the global stage?
Yeah, I do. I do. But it depends what your definition of international law is. You mean in Greenland?
That's
because you needed them at the time.
In the 1951 agreement, though, it says the United States can reopen these bases anytime you want. You can send as many troops as you want, and you haven't done it. How come?
Because I want to do it properly.
And properly means own it?
Really, it is. To me, it's ownership. Ownership is very important. Yeah.
Why is ownership important here?
Because it's what I feel is psychologically needed for success. I think that ownership gives you a thing that you can't do, whether you're talking about a lease or a treaty. Ownership gives you things and elements that you can't get from just signing.
Okay, from just having a base is what he said. So he said he doesn't need international law. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the UN charters that I just read to you, part of it is written in tangent with the United States. We helped write this. We signed off on this. By agreeing to that, it becomes a part of U.S. constitutional law. A treaty that we sign with another country is a part of United States law. Then, of course, the idea of international law, which we all sign into. Remember the UN? These are all international law that we're breaking right now. The piracy that we're seeing on the high seas. I just read it to you. Seizing a ship of which can engage in commerce with another nation if it would like. It has purchased the oil. We're going to steal the ship with the oil in it. We're going to take that oil and put it into our own reserves if we want, or we might sell it. We don't even know. All that is piracy, folks, just so we're all clear on this. What is the end game with this? This is what I want to know. We went into a nation, we took out their leader under, again, false pretenses. They try to say that he was the head of a drug cartel, which again seem to be baseless as of right now. And then we go in and start taking oil. So it was a decapitation strike to take out the head of the state, who's not trading in U.S. dollars anymore, who's trying to get membership into BRICS. They're sitting on the largest oil deposits in the world. They've also got other natural resources we could use. And they said, okay, well, if the vice president, who's now, I believe, is the interim president, this Delcy Rodriguez, if she doesn't play ball, we'll just take her out. Well, wait a minute. If she doesn't do what we say, we're going to take her out too. Regime change much? But it's really not a regime change because the existing regime is still in power. So again, I don't see what the end game of this is going to be. We talked the other day about how Trump wants to extend the defense budget to $1.5 trillion. How much of that money is going to go into creating this regime change in some of these countries? That's a big problem. That is a budget, that increase of a budget of almost 50%, right? That's a result of, again, you going to war. We haven't seen anything like that, as I told you yesterday, since the Korean War. We were there for 3 years. Is this a wartime budget? Do we plan on going to war with all these countries we've talked about? And again, how much is it going to cost to, again, create stability, put the troops on the ground in each and every one of these sovereign nations? How much is that going to cost us? So Trump says he believes in international law, but he doesn't need it. He said he'll follow it, but it doesn't really matter. Psychologically, it's whatever he says, is what he's telling us. I mean, folks, he's telling us right out of his own mouth. This is what he's saying. We have to follow international law because we are binded by law. We are not a lawless people, are we? We as conservatives, do we not believe in the law all of a sudden? Ask yourself that. And if we don't believe in the law, then what the hell does it matter if Russia trades with Venezuela? We're saying, well, we're going to go after these ships because they're not following U.S. sanctions. Well, hey, ladies and gentlemen, maybe Kristi Noem needs to go back and, I don't know, read the Constitution. I don't know. U.S. sanctions have nothing to do with international trade, just so we're clear on that. UN sanctions would mean that. That'd be international law. That's not what we're doing. What we do with Venezuela is our own business. If Russia, China, Iran, I don't care if it's Greenland, doesn't matter who it is, doesn't matter at all. They buy that oil. Brazil, it doesn't matter. They can do that. They're not breaking the law by doing that. It's affecting our interest, though, in the region because we want access to that oil. That's what it comes down to. So I just want to be clear on all this, folks, that, again, these things are heating up. They're heating up fast. It's not slowing down as much as I would like it to. And, of course, we all want peace. That's why we elected President Trump because, again, in his first administration, he was a man of peace. And we felt that this is going to happen yet again. We wanted these wars to end. They're not ending. They're only heating back up. And again, some of these tensions between the United States and other nations, largely in Latin America, are really, really starting to heat up. But let me ask you this. How is it going to work with Russia? How's it going to work with Russia if they send a ship to Venezuela with a nuclear submarine with it now? That if anything happens, they fire on us. What is that going to do? That's going to be World War III. And again, I pray to God that doesn't happen, but what if that scenario does play out? What if China gets really miffed that we stole 1.9 million barrels of their oil and they're holding on a lot of our debt and they decide to dump it? How's that going to work for us? It's not going to go well, folks. So we're playing with fire here. It's not. Again, the tensions are not easing up at all. So again, very, very troubling for me to see this, as is this article, too, in Russia Today. It says, U.S. will fix Cuba and Nicaragua, is what U.S. Senator Rick Scott of Florida has to say. Let me ask you this. Fix Cuba and Venezuela? We can't even fix our own potholes in our streets. How the hell are we going to fix Cuba and Nicaragua? What's going on with Nicaragua now? Now, he made these remarks in an interview with Fox Business just days after the U.S. commandos abducted Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro and his wife, Celia Flores, during a raid in Caracas. By the way, he said, did you get that too, what President Trump said, just in that New York Times interview? He said, I don't want to hurt anybody. Ladies and gentlemen, he killed 100 people in that raid. People that worked on the military base inside the home where Nicolas Maduro and his wife reside. We killed bodyguards, some of whom are Cuban nationals. We killed people in their homes. So this is a major problem. He doesn't want to hurt anybody. We killed 100 people, folks. That is a war crime. They're civilians. They're not military members. By the way, the military largely stood down and allowed this to happen. So I get it. It doesn't follow through. It doesn't pass the smell test. I don't want to hurt anybody. You just killed 100 people, innocent people. And you arrested a guy on these pretenses that he's a drug lord. When it's just been proven now that obviously he is not. Again, I don't know how this case is going to go. I don't know what's going to happen as a result of that, but nothing is panning out to what they're saying it's all about. They declared fentanyl as a weapon of mass destruction. Well, there's no fentanyl coming out of Venezuela, folks, just so we're all clear on that. And I know because I looked it up. In fact, of the cocaine that comes to the United States, even if any comes from Venezuela, it's a slim percentage of the overall. Most is coming from Colombia, being tracked through Latin America. It's not going to Venezuela, then going north. And anything that does go into South America and then through the Caribbean, it's not going through Venezuela as well. So let's put all this to rest. Obviously, Mexico would be the big culprit of all those drugs, by the way. Cocaine, heroin, methamphetamines, fentanyl, other illicit drugs, marijuana being imported illegally in the country. All that's coming in from Mexico. Yet our issue is with Venezuela. Again, it comes down to the oil. There's no other way for me to tell it to you, folks. That's the way it is. So now we're going to fix, and I guess we're going to change Latin America, is what Scott told Fox on Wednesday. He said, we're going to fix Cuba, Nicaragua. Yeah, we're going to fix all these countries. The only country we're not going to fix is America. Can a senator get up and tell us they're going to fix the United States, please? That would make me feel great. He goes on to say, next year we'll get a new president in Colombia. He said the senator added by declaring that democracy is coming back to this hemisphere. Unbelievable. So we're going to have regime change in Colombia, Mexico, Nicaragua, Cuba. We're going to go in and just overthrow all these governments. How much is that going to cost us? It goes to show you that's what this new $1.5 trillion spending bill for defense is going to be. And of course, we have to take Greenland by force too, because it seems Denmark is simply not going to give it up. So now we're going to invade a NATO country by force and take it over and call it part of the United States. We live in shocking times, folks. We really do. We really, really do. Now, the United States first imposed a trade blockade and sanctions on the socialist-run Cuba and Nicaragua during the Cold War. Last year, Washington imposed restrictions on Colombia's left-wing president, Gustavo Petro, whom President Trump accused of aiding drug cartels. Now, again, there's probably very good proof for that. Whether he is in charge of it, I can't say, but we know a lot of these drugs that come to the United States, cocaine, is coming out of Colombia. Petro denied allegations and has heavily criticized Trump for ordering strikes on alleged narcotics smuggling boats in the Caribbean, which, again, that's also illegal, by the way. We know there's no due process involved in that, and there needs to be, and that hasn't happened. We know we have killed fishermen in this as well. Thanks to John Kiriakou for exposing that a Trinidadian fisherman was his remains, which was be his leg in a boot, washed up on their shore. This is a problem, folks. This is a very big problem. Now, asked by journalists aboard Air Force One on Sunday whether he was planning to attack Colombia, President Trump said, "It sounds good to me." So we wake up one morning and we decide, hey, we're going to go into Colombia now. We're going to take out their president and install someone we like. How do we... What? Folks, for those that champion this, by the way, this regime change, a coup d'etat, if you will, people that say this is a great idea, what would they say if someone did that to the United States? What would they say if Russia or China or any other country, it doesn't matter who it is, came to the United States and said, you know what would be great for us if you had a communist president and we got just the person. When they gave you some BS on, election integrity and what have you. And said, no, this was the real president. This is who we recognize. This is who we want. This is going to create stability in the United States. We're going to come, we're going to kidnap President Trump and Melania in the middle of the night. We'll drop some bombs in D.C. We'll kill 100 people. And we'll bring them up on these charges in one of our federal courts. What would you say to that? Would you say this is okay? Now, leftists would come out and say that's okay. But would Republicans be all about this? Would they be in the streets cheering this on? Or would they be like some of the millions of Venezuelans who said we want Nicolas Maduro back? Now, of course, you haven't heard any of that, but that's what's happening right now. Yes, there are people that are cheering it on, of course. But again, it's not just one-sided and partisan like you've been told it is. That's another error with this entire thing. So this is another precedent that is bringing us into, again, very, very shocking times, folks. I guess if we'll say this, that we can just decide one day that we'll use military force without Congress's approval to go in and commit regime change. That doesn't work for me, folks. It doesn't work for me at all. Anyways, final article of the day. This in Fox News says Spencer Pratt announces L.A. mayoral run on a one-year anniversary of the Palisades fire that left his home destroyed. This guy's an actor, by the way, and he's had enough of the left-wingers in Los Angeles and the swamp there. So here, Spencer Pratt announced on the one-year anniversary of the start of the Palisades fire, he plans to run for mayor of Los Angeles. Pratt, whose home burned down in the fires last year, made the announcement during the They Let Us Burn protest in the Pacific Palisades near the remains of his home on Wednesday. He said on January 7th, 2025, his wife Heidi and I, he's saying Heidi and I lost our home. We lost every material possession we own. My parents lost their home too. And with it, decades of memories lost inside those walls. Pratt emotionally told the crowd on Wednesday, calling it the worst day of his life. Now, the 42-year-old noted that he grew up in the Palisades, which, by the way, if you've ever been to Southern California, you know how extremely beautiful that area is and that real estate is, right by the ocean. I mean, it's like a utopia. You can't beat what you see in Southern California, folks. You really can't. And he said, thinking that my two boys would grow up here just like I did, with the same hometown feeling. Then right before my eyes, that future that I envision burned to the ground. Obviously, you can see how detrimental that is to a lot of the people in these areas. And he became a very quick critic of L.A. Mayor Karen Bass, and of course, Gavin Newsom, the dunce that he is and the dunce that she is, of course, saying that the most heartbreaking part of last year was the realization that it was all preventable. Right? The lack of water in the fire hydrants, of course, right? The late response to everything, the lack of using fire control to do control burns, the idea that the LAFD went up to this area, they said it was extinguished, then it started back up again, they were called off. All these issues, lack of response. And again, I'm not blaming the LA Fire Department, but what I'm saying is this could have been prevented. And the late response, the lack of, again, having the right equipment, and of course the supply of water, and that delayed response became an issue. And as a result of that, there was over 11,000 homes, I think 12,000 structures in total that were destroyed in all this chaos. Now, it's important to let everybody know a year later, after these Palisades, the Malibu, Pasadena, and the Eaton Canyon area, only 13% have started even rebuilding. 4, yes, you counted right on your hand, 1, 2, 3, 4 homes total have been built. Now, Joe Pollack met with Maria Bartiromo, and he said the following about the lack of response from California's sterling Democratic government. Let's take a listen to that.
Well, it's a combination of the factors that were mentioned in that survey. The insurance costs and the delays in payouts are certainly a big factor. But one other factor is the slow pace of permitting. The city of Los Angeles, the county of Los Angeles, they have been extremely slow in approving permits for residents. And in fact, the LA City Council has not yet decided whether to waive permitting fees for homeowners who lost their homes through no fault of their own. They're not looking to remodel their kitchens or bathrooms. They're just looking to rebuild their homes. And more than a year later, there still has not been a decision about whether to waive the permitting fees. To give you some idea of what those fees cost, it's something in the range of $30,000 to $40,000 just to file the paperwork to start rebuilding your home. So there is inaction on the part of local and state leaders, and there is just a lack of leadership and accountability that is keeping people from rebuilding.
Can you imagine that? It cost you $30,000 to $40,000 just to get a new permit now? And earlier, Gavin Newsom said that people would fast track this. They would get this moving. They'd cut through the red tape. And a year later, nothing is being rebuilt. 13% of the homes that were destroyed, of the 11,000, are being rebuilt right now. How utterly disgusting. This lack of response. By the way, Republicans have launched a congressional investigation into this fire response, which is absolutely necessary. The amount of homes that were destroyed in all this, by the way, is alarming in and of itself, that the mayor, Gavin Newsom, just let these houses burn. It goes to show you folks, nobody is coming to save you. That's the big problem for this. Now, a spokesperson for the Duns, Gavin Newsom, says that Newsom has been focused on stabilizing and modernizing California's home insurance market. Yeah, right. That's why people are leaving too, by the way. Especially as climate change drives more severe wildfire risk. Well, no, it's because you're not doing anything in times of wildfires. You're not doing control burns. Now, we had a dry year in California in 2024, leading into 2025. There wasn't much rain. And as a result of that, there's more dry brush. And without control burns, without all this, and again, without the proper preparation to be ready if there's a fire like this to put it out, I guess we still can't figure out how to put out a forest fire in 2025 in California. They look to climate change, to blame climate change. No, it wasn't climate change. It was you couldn't put water in a reservoir that was damaged. You couldn't get water in fire hydrants when they could have needed it, which could have saved many of these homes. They could have stopped the fire from getting more and more out of control during the Santa Ana winds. That was another big issue with all this. So it was government malfeasance that failed the Californian people, not climate change, folks. Don't believe that for a second. They've always had, the Mediterranean climate in California, right? They've had dry summers, right? And of course, you have wetter winters. Well, we hadn't gotten water yet that year. It didn't come till February that year. So to blame climate change when you know for a fact that obviously the watery months are upon us and it hasn't happened yet, and you know the winds are going to start to pick up and you don't do anything about it. You call people off when they're extinguishing fires. You call them off. And of course, the late responses, thanks to, again, budget cuts and what have you, became another recipe for disaster, unfortunately. So we'll see what Chris Pratt does. Is he going to stand up and save L.A.? Only time will tell. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in today's show. Another show in the works. Another week down in the books. Hope you all learned something. Hope you'll share the show with others. Make sure you're staying prepped, as always. Store up that food, water, ammo, money, gold, anything you need to be self-sufficient. Have a great rest of your day. Enjoy your weekend, and I will see you back here on Monday for more groundbreaking news on the next Marco Dre Show. Until then, be good, stay busy, and God bless.